All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. And as part of the Rankin Technical College online AWD or Application and Web Development 1100 C# programming class for the spring 2024 semester, I've been doing a series of video presentations basically based off of the textbook for the class, the PowerPoint slides that go with the textbook, and that's Muroc C# 8th edition. I'm up to Chapter 11, How to Debug an App, and this is a very short chapter, so good. Let's just get right into it. Our applied objective: use the debugging techniques presented in this chapter to debug any unhandled exceptions or logical errors in the apps you develop. Our knowledge objectives: describe the use of the hot reload feature. Describe the differences between the three-step commands that you can use to control app execution. Describe the primary differences between the autos window, the locals window, and the watch window. Describe the use of the immediate window and explain how you can use the debug class to display information in the output window. So when you are working in here, and I'm just going to do this, I'm going to bring up a brand new program. So let me come in here and start up a new session of Visual Studio. It will be a Windows Forms app. All right, and just put it over here, and I'm just going to call this thing Debug Exercise. That's going to be the name of the folder. Okay, and we'll call it the same thing here. So we'll just call this debug. How about this? Debug project. It'll be in a folder called debug exercise. And the name of the solution will be debug solution. All right, now the simplest way to show you this, all right, is like this. I'm not going to put anything on my GUI right now, but I'm going to come in here and view code. And in here, let's see, we'll put in this. In fact, we'll put in a button. Okay, so I'm going to put a button right there. And we'll call it BTN calculate. All right, the text on the button will be calculate in just a minute. Any color we haven't used yet? Yeah, let's use turquoise. That's good. No, I don't want that for the button. I'm sorry. Get that out of there. I want that for the background here. All right, there we go. So we got that. We will change the size, as we most often do here, to 20 point, bold, and Arial. And I will change the text on here to calculate. There you go. All right, now, for now, I'm not going to worry about making another thing. I'm going to set something up that's going to break. All right. So I'm going to say here int x equal 10, int y equals 0, int z equals x divided by y. This should give us, I believe, a divide by 0 exception. All right, so let's come in here and run this. Click calculate. And system.divide by 0 exception, attempt to divide by 0. Okay, and you see we can call the call stack, which will show us everything that's been called up to this point. View details. All right, and this is showing us a window. We're going to get into something similar to that in a little bit. We can copy that if we wanted to. I've never started a live session, so I'm not sure what that does. And the exception settings, which basically just kind of repeat what we've already seen. All right, so why did I show you that? All right, I mean, was that a waste of your time? Well, when you are running a program, basically when you run a program like this, you're in one of three modes. What do I mean? Right now, we're in design mode. It even says here, design. We're in design mode. All right. Once you run this, we're in run mode, sometimes called execute mode. All right. And once we do this, we're basically kind of dead in the water. All right. So someone will say we're in debug mode or we are in exception mode, etc. All right. Now, when you do this, there's different kinds of errors that you can make. What I just showed you right there, this is called a runtime error. It didn't show me any errors on my system. No, the program doesn't show any errors. All right. Now, if I came through here and did this, if I said int z equals x divided by a when we don't have an a, notice right there we get an error. It says the name a does not exist in the current context. And it also says the name y is assigned, but its value is never used. Now, if this happens to you and you're not paying attention and you go to run it, it'll come back and say there were build errors. Would you like to? Literally all the time, I just say no. All right. And then if you take your mouse and double click, well, there's the thing on a Y, which says we're not using it. And here's the error. All right. So if I change that to a Y, both of those will go away. Okay. Now notice it's not showing anything with Z. Okay. But if I came down here and said, like, for example, message box dot show, and I said the answer is plus Z, I think that'll go away. Now, that's never going to run in its current form because it would say the answer is infinity. Now, if you did the same thing in JavaScript, it would actually run it and give you infinity for the answer. It doesn't do that here. All right? I get what I showed you before. All right. And it's still running, I think, so let's stop that run. Boom. Here we go. All right. So I showed you in break mode. No, not the future value app, just a different one. All right, the one that I was working on, but just same kind of thing. Now notice it says here the input string 100 was not in the correct format. Probably. Notice it's a convert to decimal, and you're trying to convert something that has a $sign in it. And that's why you get the error. Now you get a locals window here, and this locals window shows you basically everything that's running right now and its value. All right. And in here, they've got it split. You get an output window, and that's going to show you where your error is. All right. So there's 4 ways to enter break mode. All right. They call it break mode. I called it debug mode or whatever. One I just showed you. Force an unhandled exception to be thrown. All right. Second, set a breakpoint and run the app. Well, let's do that. To set a breakpoint, and you've seen me do this a couple times, but I'm going to come before this, and I'm going to come over to this area over here, this gray area down here. This is called the gutter. And if I go to line 24, I just set a breakpoint. Now, the execution will stop. It will stop before this executes. So if I run this and I click calculate, notice I'm there. Program hasn't blown up yet. But I can look here and it says Z is 0 because I haven't given it a value yet. X is 10 and Y is 0. All right, now if I tell it to continue by clicking the continue button, my error will come up. All right, so just so you know that. Now, to get rid of that breakpoint, I just click on it again. And now the breakpoint's gone. You can set multiple breakpoints. You can't set a breakpoint on a blank line. See that? I'm trying to and it won't let me. All right. And you typically can't set one. Like if I set it here, it'll actually put it here. All right. But the break, it breaks before that statement has run. You can choose debug step into command or press F11. Now, if I hit F11 because I'm using Camtasia on here, mine will break, but I'll do the debug step into so you can see it. So I'm right here. All right, and I'm going to do a debug step into. And it's going to show me what's happening. Notice I'm in main here. So if I do another debug step into, okay, we've got that, a debug step into, a debug step into. All right, this is going to bring up that form that we just saw. So another debug step into, and there we are. Now we're in here. All right, so another debug. So all this stuff actually has been running in basically every program you've ever done. Now I'm in here. This right here is called, and it'll make more sense in Chapter 12, this is the constructor. It's got the same name as the class itself. All right, I'm going to do another debug step into, and I'm going to have to do a few of them. Step into, debug, step into, and notice now it's coming in here, and it's going through our form designer file. And this is where it's going to initialize all this stuff. So debug, step into, and it's just going to go through all these lines. I don't want to waste your time by watching me do that. All right. You can choose a debug break all command or press Control Alt break when the app is executing. Well, let's execute it and do a Control Alt break. Control Alt. I don't know where break is on here, to be honest with you. Break. It's by my pause. Control Alt break. Well, that didn't do diddly. Mine is still running. But it says that the other thing that you can do here is a debug break all. Let's try that. So the program's running, and I'm going to do a debug break all. All right. And I'm in break mode now, I think. All right. Notice it skipped the other stuff, and it's got that application.run. My guess is if I click here, yeah, it'll bring it back up again. Okay. All right. The future value app with a change being made while it's running. This is what's known as that hot reload feature, and it's fairly new. You can go in and make certain changes when the program is actually running. All right. So, as it says here, hot reload lets you apply changes to an app while it's running without restarting the app. To do that, save the changes, click the hot reload button in the standard toolbar. Now, let's try something here, okay? We'll see if this works. I don't know if it will or not. All right, so we're here. Program's running. All right, and let's see. Again, it said save the changes and click the hot reload button in the standard toolbar. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to change this to 3. All right, and the program is still running. I'm going to do a file save all. All right, then in the standard toolbar, not the toolbox, the toolbar, which is up here. I think my standard one is here. It is. Okay, that's the standard one right there. So one of these should be hot reload. I don't know which one. I don't use this. Well, let's see if we can find it up here. Not under debug. Not under build. I don't see it there, or there, or there, or there. Well, I don't see it. It says, according to here, save the changes. I did that. Click the hot reload button in the standard toolbar. Well, I brought up the standard toolbar. You saw that. It says here, if I right mouse click in an empty area, it shows me the toolbars I have up. They're standard. So according to that, it's someplace in here. There it is, hot reload. Alt F10. So let's try that. Alt F10. Yeah, I don't. That's what it usually does when I've got problems. Okay, now I'm gonna have to see if I can get rid of that. Oh, brother. Okay, so I couldn't get hot reload to work. How's that? The dialog that's displayed if hot reload can't make a change. What it's saying is sometimes, depending on the severity of the change you make, it is so severe you have to go back and you have to rebuild the program. All right, and if that's the case, you'd click right there. All right, you can also check here that says if you do use hot reload, always do a rebuild, and it'll manually do it for you. All right, breakpoints I've shown you already. Now, as it says here, to set and clear breakpoints, you can set a breakpoint before you run the app or even while the app is in break mode. You can either do what I did, and that is click in that gutter area, or press the F9 key. And you can do the same thing to remove any breakpoints. Now, if you've got multiple breakpoints, there's a debug delete all breakpoint command or disable all breakpoint commands or an enable. So if you want to work with many of them at a time. Okay. Now, earlier when I ran the program, when we looked at an example that was back here, we saw this locals window right there. All right. And that's what they're going to talk about next in here, right here. And what the locals window does is it basically shows you the value of variables in the method or function you're currently in. So as it says, it displays information about the variables within the current scope. If you click the arrow symbol to the left of this keyword, all right, the properties and values of the form are displayed. So that's right there. To change the value of a variable or property, double click it and then type in a new value. With Visual Studio 19 or 2019 or later, where ours is later, you can search for values in the local window and specify what you want to have it show. There's an autos window. Now notice as it says, it works similarly to the locals window, but it only displays information about variables used by the statement you're on and the statement that had run previously. All right, that's autos. You can also put a watch window. What a watch window does is you can put a watch on a variable. So if you think the program isn't working right, you think it's the value of a variable, you can put a watch on it. All right. There's also an immediate window, and that's the window they show in here. What you can do in there is you can type, for example, question mark, followed by the name of any variable in the program, and it'll show you its current value. Okay? And they're giving you examples here. There's other stuff you can do in there too. When you are debugging your program, if it doesn't work, quite often there'll be some information that you can use or that might be worth looking at in the output window here. And that's what the author is saying. All right, when you try to build the program, okay, so if you look at here, and I want to show you this, I just want to make sure you understand. You're all bright people. But if I look in here, let's say that I made a bunch of changes, and I go back and I do a file save all. I can do a build, and then I can say build solution. And it'll show usually in here. I don't know why it's not, but usually in there. No, it's not showing anything now. Great. In there, it will show in this window. Oh, where are you? Properties. What is it? Other windows. Let's see. Build. Well, usually it shows it in here. There's a build window that comes up, and again, it looks like this. And if it succeeds, you'll see build 1 succeeded, 0 failed. And if it fails, it'll be 0 succeeded, 1 failed. All right. All right. You can actually go in and add debug.writeLine to show the stuff in here if you want to do that. All right. So these are the statements that they used in order to do that. You can also do this. It says it uses an if statement, so it's only going to show it if a certain condition is met. The visualizer drop-down window for a string in the autos window, you can actually display this stuff in different formats. There's text, there's an XML visualizer, an HTML visualizer, and a JSON, which is JavaScript object notation visualizer. So there's the text. So basically, it's going to kind of show you what your app is going to look like. All right. Data tips, not even going to go into that. And this is the IEnumerable. I'm not going to go into that either. Now, I'm not very long into this lecture. I'm only 23 minutes in. So normally I would go in and do another lecture, but I'm not going to do that. All right, I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you 3 things here. I'm going to put these in right here, and I'm going to make sure once I get done with this that I let everybody see exactly what I'm doing here. All right. I'm going to quickly, and I mean quickly, I'm going to go over 3 different articles that are here, 3 different things. Now, all 3 of these things that I'm going to show you are from Microsoft documentation. All right. And I believe at least that all of them have 2023 dates on them. So although they're not brand new, they're fairly new. All of them are. And I would suggest that if you look at them, you do them in this order. And again, I'll save this. All right. What I'm going to do is this. I'm going to make this full screen size. And this is a little bit too big. So let me cut down my size here. I'm at 26. Let's try 22. That'll work. All right. So I'm going to leave that up there for just a second. I'd recommend you do them in this order. I'm going to quickly go through over all three of these. Debug for absolute beginners, tutorial, learn how to debug code using Visual Studio, and first look at the Visual Studio debugger. All right. So let's quickly bring these up. So the first one is debug for absolute beginners. And what this is more than anything else is it tells you some things to do if you write your program and your program doesn't work. All right, because you'll get bugs sooner or later. Number one, clarify the problem by asking yourself the right questions. Notice, what did you expect your code to do and what happened instead? Examine your assumptions. Make sure that what you assume to be true indeed is true. All right. Now, don't worry about the API stuff in here. That's a little more advanced. But does your code contain any typos? Did you make a change to your code and assume it's unrelated to the problem you're seeing? Did you expect an object or variable to contain a certain value that's different from what actually happened? Do you know the intent of the code? As it says, it's often more difficult to debug someone else's code. All right, next, step through your code. I just showed you doing the debug step into or hitting the F11 key and going through it a line at a time. You can also put yourself into debug mode with a debug start debugging menu command. Then they say create a simple app. I'm not going to do this. I created an app before and put an error in it. But I would strongly suggest that you go through this. All right, they have you do this. And then they have you go through it and run it. All right, and it says here's the expected output. And here's the output you get. All right, it says looking at the output, we know that G type is the name of the class that stores the galaxy type right here. We're trying to show the actual galaxy type, not the name of the class. So you go through and you debug it by coming in there and putting in a breakpoint, then running the program again, and finding out what and where the problem is. That's the best way to learn. All right, so that was the first one. Next, very similar, but learn how to debug using Visual Studio. Again, they have you create a project. It's not the same project. All right. They have you start the debugger. Okay. And you run through it. Says F5 starts the debugger. Since we haven't done anything special, it runs to completion and you'll see this. So it's showing as you're putting, F, FR, Fred, etc. All right, and it's counting how many letters you have. Then they're telling you to set a breakpoint and start the debugger again. All right. Now, when you do that, you navigate through it, okay? As it says, you can expand what you're looking at like letters and see what it looks like to make sure it looks the way that you want it to look. All right. Now, navigate code using run to click. This is kind of neat. All right. It says select F5 to advance the breakpoint again. Then hover over a line like this right here. And what happens is you'll get a tooltip that will come up that says run execution to here. And if you choose run to click, what will happen is it'll go this far and it'll stop here. To rerun your application from the beginning in the debugger, do a Control-Shift F5 or choose the restart button on the debug toolbar. Now, if you look, if I show you my toolbars, if I right mouse click on here, try that again. There's debug. And if I click this, notice it added some more stuff in here. If I get rid of it, that's gone. All right, so there's more stuff that you can put in there. All right, then they have an inspect using autos and locals. What we just talked about, setting your own watch, examining the call stack where you are able to go through and look at this line by line. We'll go through this stuff in class. All right, when we get to that particular chapter 10, or I guess it's 11. Finally, first look at the debugger. Again, set a breakpoint and start the debugger. Navigate using the step commands. So this one has you go through and use many of the step commands. You hear you use the F10 instead of F11. F10 advances the debugger without stepping into functions or methods. So you can skip over code you're not interested in. Run to a point quickly using the mouse. That was that run to click that we just talked about. Run to cursor is pretty much the same thing. Studio 2022 supports live code editing while debugging. All right, so you can read that if you're interested. Okay. You can use data tips more with autos and locals and setting a watch and the call stack. Okay, inspect an exception. Kind of showed you that a little bit before. Now, I went through that unbelievably quickly. You know, I spent about 10 minutes on it. All right. And I gave you what I consider to be 3 pretty good references for you to take a look at that. All right. So this, I'm still got to go back, and I'm going to do this tomorrow morning, not right now, but I'm going to come in tomorrow morning, and I'm going to try to see if I can finally make the last fix on this payroll program for Chapter 10 I've been working on. After we get done with that, that'll mean that where we are in here, I will now be done with Section 1 and Section 2. Section 3 is 3 and 5, well, 3, 4, and 5 are the hardest in the book. When we get into Chapter 12, we're going to slow it down. And we're going to, as it says, create and use classes. That may be the hardest chapter in the book. I don't know. I'm going to spend very little time on 13. I'm going to spend very little time on 15. I'll spend a lot of time on 12, some time on 14, and some time on 16. Then when we get into here, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on file I/O because most of the time when you want to save things, you'll be using databases. So we'll spend a little time on this, and then we'll look at link. All right, don't worry right now about what that is, and then we'll end up by going over this. And I'm going to be working on a project in there that we'll all be able to work on together. Okay, so that's what we have, I don't know, to look forward to, or whatever you want to call it. Okay. All right, so let's see here. Let me get rid of some of this stuff that I have open. All right, that'll do for now, and I will see you shortly.